fearlessly talking about the biggest stories that matter to you the most. Breaking news, John Calipari is finalizing a 5-year deal to become the Arkansas Razorbacks' next head coach, covering college sports like no one else. The biggest guests in sports. We now welcome in Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun.
Sense of pride I had, I came to connect.
The legend, Tim Tebow, joins us.
We'll run it back. I like it.
The legend, Herschel Walker. Welcome in, everybody. Little Tuesday morning edition, Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. When I tell you people, we got ourselves just a monster show, a lot to dive into. So let's not waste too much time here. We're going to open Lane Kiffin, kind of sort of getting body bagged by Ole Miss right now. We will discuss everything that has happened in Oxford. A lot of good news if you're an Ole Miss Rebels fan. We will then talk about the QB carousel, as it looks like Sam Leavitt may actually come off the board to Lane Kiffin. Kentucky gets their guy, and in just the last couple hours, Auburn and Florida get their guys as well. Speaking of the QB carousel, Ty Simpson, the buzz is ramping up. Great to be a Tennessee Volunteer. We'll see about that. By the way, Michigan and Kyle Whittingham very quietly had a big Monday. And then we will wrap with a little bit of college hoops. Slow Monday on the court, but off of it, things keep just getting really weird for Mark Pope at Kentucky. And I'll tell you, I think there was something interesting that happened that is worth discussing, and a stat that I saw that would very concern me if I was a Kentucky fan. Before we get started, make sure you're subscribed to Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. New clips on YouTube going up every single day. We're closing in on 70,000 subscribers. We need you guys. Share with a friend. Tell a friend. Help us support the show. But we are closing in on 70,000 subscribers. We do appreciate your support. We also appreciate your support if you're listening on Apple and Spotify as well. All you got to do is search Aaron Torres Pod. Leave us a 5-star rating and review. By the way, our Inside College Sports newsletter is humming. I will drop a link here maybe during a commercial break. Make sure you're subscribed for all of the latest portal NIL news. If you're on Twitter, it is linked on my profile. You know what else has me fired up here on a Tuesday? Our friends, our hotel partners, Circa Casino and Circa Sportsbook. Okay, so I've told you all about it. When you're in Vegas, only place you want to go to watch the big game is the Circa Casino in Las Vegas. Beautiful facility, all that. We know about the biggest sports book in the world. We know about Stadium Swim. What you might not know, though, is that Circa has opened up a brand new sports book at Mint Kentucky Downs in Franklin, Kentucky. You can see it on the screen right now. The Mint Gaming Hall, Mint Kentucky Downs, Franklin, Kentucky. Brand new Circa Sportsbook, all of the same great amenities that come in the Vegas Sportsbook. You can find them at the Mint. Beautiful place to watch a game. It's that time of year. College football is starting to ramp down. You need a place to watch the semifinals, but college basketball is ramping up. Speaking of which, we will do some shows live there from March Madness. Can't even imagine what we'll be saying about Kentucky at that point, but Mint Kentucky Downs, Franklin, Kentucky, about 38 minutes from Nashville. I did the drive door to door. Also not far from Bowling Green, from Louisville. Mint Kentucky Downs, Franklin, Kentucky. We appreciate their support. With that said, it is a busy week, busy time in the world of sports. There is no more time to waste. So let's get to the topic of the day. Topic of the day, listen. College football semifinals are Friday and Thursday. We got Ole Miss, Miami. Friday is the Indiana-Oregon game. But I'll tell you what, maybe the most interesting story of Monday into Tuesday is what is going on at Ole Miss right now, okay? And so listen, I promise you, we're not going to do the full 10-minute segment on what happened with Lane Kiffin, why he left, this and that. We've done it. We've talked about it. He has moved on. Ole Miss has moved on. LSU has moved on. This isn't to do the segment about Lane Kiffin leaving and why he left. But I do think to contextualize what happened on Monday and early Tuesday, it is important to note what most people, now I don't know if Ole Miss fans felt this way, but on a national scale, how most people felt about the program after Lane Kiffin left. And what it felt like most people felt was this, was that the Ole Miss football program was Lane Kiffin, and that transparently it was going to fall apart without him. They got the, and I'm not being sarcastic, Ole Miss fans. I'm telling you how people felt. But they got the lovely game at home against Tulane. It's going to be great. Biggest game in the history of the state of Mississippi. Then we know what's going to happen from there. They're going to go to the Sugar Bowl, get smoked by Georgia. All of their players are going to enter the portal the next day. All of their coaches are going to leave. LSU is going to build this dynasty off the backs of all the players that left Ole Miss, that led Ole Miss to the playoffs, And, Ole Miss was going to get left behind with Pete Golding as its head coach. Well, I bring it up because Monday showed, well, really the last 2 weeks showed the exact opposite. We already talked about the incredible game New Year's night in New Orleans. Ole Miss beats Georgia. But what is really interesting is everything that has happened since. And in some ways, and I'll explain why in a minute, I think you can argue that Ole Miss win had as much impact on the field as it did off it on New Year's night. That is because in this crazy portal world, right, we always talk about this guy's going here and that guy's going there. Well, we all know the college basketball burner, Trilly Donovan. He always says sometimes the best guys you get are the ones that you keep. The best guys you get are the ones that you don't lose to somebody else. And over the last 72 hours or so, Ole Miss has gotten one great piece of news after another about their 2026 football roster. The first name, the biggest one. Let's go ahead and discuss it. Well, let me just run through everything that's happened. Monday morning, we wake up. Portal's going crazy. Brendan Sorsby's getting this. This guy's getting that. Lane Kiffin is visiting there. What does it all mean? Quietly, though, Ross Dellinger reports Trinidad Chambliss, who is still working to get eligible for next year. He's fighting the NCAA. We're going to get into the details in a minute. But Trinidad Chambliss, who would have been the best quarterback in the portal, he ain't going to the portal. If he plays college football next year, it will be at Ole Miss. He officially announced on Monday, I'm coming back with an asterisk of I got to get eligible. But basically, if Trinidad Chambliss is playing college football this next season, it will be at Ole Miss. Again, we'll get into the argument for and against if he can get an extra year of eligibility for the NCAA in a second. But I bring it up because that was the good news of Monday morning. And by Monday night, I think to me, this was the genuine shocker. Okay. And I'm going to take you guys back. I didn't pull the clip, but do you remember during that whole saga, Lane Kiffin, at some point, it was, I want to say maybe the week that his family visited Baton Rouge and Gainesville. Remember Lane Kiffin goes on Pat McAfee and he's trying to, deflect and I'm happy here. And this is whatever. And then he brings on Kewan Lacey. Kewan Lacey just comes on and it looks like a hostage video, if we're being perfectly honest. But the assumption was Kewan Lacey, most explosive offensive player Ole Miss has outside of Trinidad Chambliss. He's going to follow Lane Kiffin for sure. I mean, there's no way he's not going to end up at LSU. Well, Monday night, I don't know who, I want to say Max Olson from ESPN was the first to report it. But by Tuesday morning, it became official. Kewan Lacey is officially set to return to Ole Miss, the most dynamic playmaker that they have. By the way, he is not draft eligible. He has plenty of eligibility left. So this is not a hypothetical Trinidad Chambliss thing. This is, this guy's going to be back. And to use the Seinfeld quote that I use often, this is real. And it's going to be spectacular. Kewan Lacey, 1,400 yards, 23 rushing touchdowns this season, including 2, by the way, against Georgia just the other night. And so there were other names, the kicker who was making kicks from like 60 yards out the other night. He's coming back. Some defensive players are coming back. It's worth noting Ole Miss has actually made quite a few nice moves in the portal outside of the program. Jaheim Otis, who was the number 1 defensive lineman last year in the portal, committed to Colorado a year ago. He's now coming to Ole Miss. So I just bring it up because it has been one good piece of news after another. And it really speaks to me, basically everything that we, and I'll include myself, I got to take the L on this one. Everything that we thought was going to happen at Ole Miss, once Lane Kiffin left, has not happened. And everything that Ole Miss fans told us about who Lane Kiffin might be and the type of dude he might be and who might actually be doing the work behind the scenes, it appears as though it's all coming to fruition. And I was thinking about this. I was thinking that basically, like I said a second ago, I think you can argue that Sugar Bowl win might have changed the entire trajectory of the program. Listen, I'll leave it up to Ole Miss fans to tell me if it's the biggest win in program history or the biggest win since the 50s, since Arch Manning was on campus, or Archie Manning, I should say. I'm not enough of a Ole Miss historian to know. I don't know. What I do know, though, is this, is that because that win happened, all of a sudden now you have the entire team in the facility fighting for a common cause after the transfer portal open, right? And so let's work under the hypothetical that Ole Miss does not beat Georgia the other night in New Orleans. Well, guess what? Season ends. Half the assistant coaches get on a plane. They go to LSU. The portal's open. And I think hypothetically, a lot of the guys that have verbally or literally announced that they are coming back to Ole Miss, they probably consider the portal. They probably consider leaving. By the way, God forbid that they lost in the opening round of the college football playoff. Then all of a sudden you're talking about a week to essentially, I'm not going to say the word tamper, but, tamper with these guys. So the fact that they won this game completely changes everything. And a couple of things on this. One, had an Ole Miss fan reach out to me. This is going to sound crazy. If Trinidad Chambliss gets eligible next year, is Ole Miss the SEC preseason favorite? It sounds crazy, but they just beat Georgia. They're better than Bama. They have the best quarterback in the league. I guess maybe Texas would be the team. But I just bring it up because we are talking about an elite team, an elite program going forward. And it all stems from the fact that a lot of us were wrong on the whole Lane Kiffin situation. And I will say, bigger picture, listen, like I said, I do think a lot of us almost made the Ole Miss program synonymous with Lane Kiffin. But at the same time, here is the reality. When he left, all of a sudden you started hearing all sorts of things about how much is Lane Kiffin actually doing and how much credit is he getting for stuff that other people are doing. A lot of people made it a point to say it's actually Charlie Weis that calls the plays. Well, I'll tell you what, that offense, and a lot of it is Trinidad Chambliss, that offense looks pretty good since Lane Kiffin left. Maybe it was more Charlie Weis than we gave him credit for during the season. Pete Golding certainly says that because Pete Golding said Charlie Weis couldn't afford not to have a couple good games because this is his only chance he's going to get credit for everything that he has done for this team. By the way, the rumor when Lane Kiffin left town was that Pete Golding was doing the vast majority of the recruiting. Well, guess what? You retain Trinidad Chambliss. Trinidad Chambliss, that name is giving me more problems than Trinidad Chambliss gave the Georgia defense. I don't know why I can't say the name here at 10:19 Central Time here on Tuesday morning. But listen, the story always was Pete Golding was the guy doing all the recruiting. Charlie Weis had more of a say in the offense than anybody, and it does not look like this program has not missed a beat without Lane Kiffin. And so let's credit the people in the building. Let's credit the 85 players, the rest of the coaching staff, all of whom have had the impact that they've had. And now, independent of what happens with Miami on Thursday night, and we'll do our preview the next game or the next show, whatever. But at the same time, you got to feel great if you're an Ole Miss fan going forward. Like I said, I think if Trinidad Chambliss comes back, they might be the preseason SEC favorites, certainly top 5 in the country, which is crazy to think about. Now, really quickly, I think the Trinidad Chambliss thing now becomes interesting, okay? So I'm not going to bore you with too many details. You can look into it yourself. But Trinidad Chambliss, the star Ole Miss quarterback, is fighting the NCAA for another season of eligibility. I'll try to be quick on this because it's boring bureaucracy, but essentially he has been on a college campus for 5 years. He took a traditional red shirt during the 2021 season. 2022 is the season that he is arguing that he should get back. Looked into this a little bit this morning before the show. Basically, my understanding is he essentially had tonsillitis for the entire season. Now, he's arguing that he basically missed the whole season because he had tonsillitis. The counter to that is the argument is he wasn't the starter and wasn't going to play anyway, okay? So that is the crux of the back and forth with the NCAA. But I'll also tell you this. There was a very interesting development on that front over the last probably 36 hours or so. So Ross Dellinger, I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe he was the one that broke the news that Trinidad Chambliss was coming back to college and coming back to Ole Miss specifically. He did a big article, and he really kind of laid out the legal case for Trinidad Chambliss. And I bring it up to very simply say that basically there is now a stronger legal argument for Trinidad Chambliss to be eligible next year because he has signed the paperwork with Ole Miss. Now, I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not going to get too in the weeds here. But basically, first of all, Tom Mars is the lawyer for Trinidad Chambliss. I've said it a million times. Basically, the reason we don't have transfer rules right now is because of Tom Mars. Shea Patterson was the famous player at Ole Miss, wanted to transfer after Hugh Freeze was fired. And basically, Tom Mars fought the NCAA and said this guy should be eligible. He represented Jim Harbaugh against the NCAA. He represented Michigan when they got in that brawl with Michigan State a few years ago. So this guy has been a thorn in the side of the NCAA for years. And according to Ross Dellinger, and Matt, you could pop up the tweet at any point. I don't know that there's anything groundbreaking about it. But Ross Dellinger says Trinidad Chambliss' new deal with Ole Miss paves the way for legal action if the waiver is denied. Millions of dollars are now on the line, and then he teases the article inside Trinidad Chambliss' rise, blah, 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 this and that. Listen, like I said, I'm not a lawyer, but what I do know is two things. Tom Mars is a monster, okay? Like Tom, like, you know, you don't want to get into a pit with a lion. You don't want to get into a football game against Kurt Cignetti's team. Tom Mars is basically undefeated against the NCAA. It's basically Kurt Cignetti versus Alabama, Indiana versus Alabama. That is Tom Mars against the NCAA. But I guess the argument is now you are basically restricting trade and you're causing. I don't know all the details. What I do know is Tom Mars is a monster, and he has a great track record in battling the NCAA, and I would not bet against him. So the Trinidad Chambliss stuff we'll find out in the coming weeks. But what I will tell you, it feels like this program is going to largely return intact. Now, in theory, there's still 2 more games for Ole Miss to play. In theory, there's still a lot to be left to determine on the field. But I'll tell you this, I do think that win over Georgia changed the entire program. The portal opens without all these Ole Miss players. They have another week to decide to stay. Hotty toddy, gosh almighty. I'll tell you what, man. This Ole Miss team could be very good going into the 2026 season. And obviously, by the way, we'll monitor the Trinidad Chambliss situation as things move forward. Very quickly, outside of Ole Miss, there's been a lot of movement in the portal over the last couple of days. What we're going to do, spend just a few minutes talking all the quarterback stuff. Then we'll get to Michigan, which got the best quarterback news they could get the other in a couple minutes. We'll talk about them, and we'll talk about this crazy Ty Simpson story, which keeps picking up steam. Quarterbacks, we'll be quick here because this stuff moves so fast. Biggest name in the portal, especially now that we know that Trinidad Chambliss, if he plays college football, will be at Ole Miss, is Sam Leavitt. And we talked about Sam Leavitt on Sunday's show. Now, my assumption is by the time many of you see or hear this, he could be committed. So I'm not going to, not committed like he's going to the insane asylum. Like he might be committing in the next few hours to LSU, excuse me. And so we're not going to spend too much time here. But the bottom line is, listen, I told you on Sunday's show, you just have to follow the QB dominoes. And we knew that once the first one committed, they would all follow suit. Well, Sunday after we get off air, Brendan Sorsby, who at the time had some LSU crystal ball predictions, he ends up going to Texas Tech. And we know about the money, and it was $5 million, and we don't need, whatever. It's Texas Tech's money. I don't care. By the way, I do wonder how, we're supposed to be at a $20 million cap, 15, 16, 17 million for football. I don't think Brendan Sorsby is going to take up a third of their cap. I'm curious to see if the NCAA, if the CSE even tries to fight it. Another conversation for another day. But once Brendan Sorsby came off the board, it started to set this trickle-down effect, right? So Sam Leavitt was scheduled to visit Texas Tech. That visit gets canceled. And now he is in the midst, as we record here, of a quote-unquote 2-day visit to LSU. I expect this thing to get done. Whatever we think of Lane Kiffin, and I was just critical a second ago, the bottom line is you cannot deny he is a great quarterback coach. He is a great quarterback guru. He is a great quarterback whisperer, and he's gotten a lot out of a lot of different quarterbacks. And if this is the guy he wants, I'm not here to tell him that he's wrong. Now, I kind of think Sam Leavitt, like, I wouldn't put him as one of the top 2-3 quarterbacks in the portal. Certainly, if Trinidad Chambliss had been available, I would have liked him more. But there's other guys that I like more than Leavitt. I like Sorsby more. I like Josh Hoover, who committed to Indiana more. Doesn't really matter in my opinion, though. The bottom line is Sam Leavitt. I would expect him to come off the board. LSU and Miami from the beginning were the schools that were projected to be the front runners for him. It is interesting. He did take a visit to Kentucky. Now, for a minute, Kentucky fans got mad at me because I said, I don't think there's any chance that he's going to Kentucky. But Sam Leavitt is at LSU, or is on a visit to LSU, and I do think he'll probably be committing by end of day Tuesday, which brings us to what happened late Monday night. Kentucky, they made their move under Will Stein. And let's go ahead and give credit to Will Stein. Listen, you swung big on Sam Leavitt. I'll never blame any coach. If you have a chance to get what you believe to be the best player available at whatever position on campus, you do it even if it's unlikely. I'll tell you a quick side story, but I grew up under Jim Calhoun. I'm a UConn guy. Dan Hurley is the head coach now. I remember years ago talking to Tom Moore, who is the current UConn basketball GM. He said, what I like about coaching under Dan Hurley, and he coached under Jim Calhoun as well, he said, they always said, if you think you have a shot with a guy, go swing big, okay? And so Kentucky swung big with Sam Leavitt. They didn't get him, but credit to Will Stein, who, by the way, is back in Oregon preparing for the college football semifinals against Indiana. They pivoted quickly, and on Monday night, the surprising twist, as follow me here, Kenny Minchey, who was he played the last few years at Notre Dame, got beat out by CJ Carr in the fall, close competition. We'll talk about it in a second. He enters the portal, commits to Nebraska, but apparently did not sign any paperwork because as of right now, on Monday night, he flipped to Kentucky. Now, we'll see. I would get that paperwork to him quick, make sure that he's locked and loaded. But I'll tell you what, Kenny Minchey isn't the biggest name in the portal. He's a really good quarterback, though. And so what I would say is this, is that with Kenny Minchey, because I saw a lot of first of all, if Matt Rule wants you, if Will Stein wants you, you're good. But what I would also say is there's a lot of, he was a backup and he never even played. And look, you don't know with any of this stuff, right? I mean, listen, you don't know with any of this stuff. I mean, Nico Iamaleava was the number one quarterback in the portal last year. Didn't go great at UCLA. We don't have to do a Nico segment right now. You never know. But what I do know is Kenny Minchey, highly rated recruit, multiple years at Notre Dame. And I think what's important is that he basically, the quarterback competition at Notre Dame this past year, it came right down to the wire between him and CJ Carr. And I'll tell you what you need to do is you need to go to our Torres on UK Twitter account because we shared a video. Now, Notre Dame has one of those behind the scenes shows that's made about them. It's on Peacock. We couldn't show the video, and I thought the video kind of really told the whole story. But I just bring it up because there was a video of, it was a season-long documentary on Notre Dame football, okay? And they show the segment where Marcus Freeman pulls Kenny Minchey aside and says, we have decided to go with CJ Carr as the starting quarterback. And you can see in the video, since we can't show you the video, it didn't really feel like it was necessary to play on the show. But in the video, you can see Marcus Freeman almost in tears telling Kenny Minchey that he's not going to be the starter. But I bring it up because in that video, he says, and this is a direct quote, he said, quote, "This was one of the toughest decisions I have ever had to make as a head coach, naming the other guy the starter." Now, I know people are going to say, oh, what was he supposed to say? Listen, first of all, a coach doesn't have to have that conversation. And what I would also say is that it's not always a hard decision. Sometimes you go into fall camp, you're allowing two guys to compete, but deep down inside that one is going to get the priority over the other. And so I just bring it up because it feels like it was a hard decision. I was checking in with some of my Notre Dame people over the last, 12 hours after he committed, and they told me, like, dude, some of us were actually upset that CJ Carr got the nod. Now, history tells us CJ Carr was obviously the right guy, but there were people that cover Notre Dame that are Notre Dame fans that wanted Kenny Minchey as the next quarterback at Notre Dame. So I just bring it up because I think this to me is a semi-home run hire or a semi-home run move, especially pivoting off Sam Leavitt quickly and saying, listen, we took our swing. It didn't work out, but we need our quarterback in place. And I'll say this, in the limited opportunities that he had, 77% completion percentage in the, 30 or so passes that he had, but highly rated guy and a guy that, again, I can't emphasize this enough. There was a world where if things go a little bit different, under a little bit different circumstances, Kenny Minchey wins the Notre Dame job. Instead, he goes into the portal, originally commits to Nebraska, ends up at Kentucky. Really quick, two more portal QB pieces of news that just broke within the last couple hours, so I don't have a ton on each of them, but neither of them was surprising. Byron Brown, producer Matt, the only reason he's been getting out of bed the last couple of days is waiting on Byron Brown news. Well, it becomes official. Byron Brown, who was awesome for Alex Golesh these past couple of years at USF, he has officially committed to Auburn. He will follow Alex Golesh. Really quickly, as far as Byron Brown, 28 touchdown passes this year, a bunch more rushing touchdowns, the true dual threat quarterback that is perfect for that system. I think the other thing that's worth noting, let's never forget, he went into the swamp and led USF to a victory over Florida. So he can ball, but he's big, he's strong, he's physical. And I'll say this, if we were going to spend, we spent all last offseason being excited about John Mateer coming from Washington State and this guy and that guy. Byron Brown being able to follow Alex Golesh in the same system, it feels like success to me. And so I know a few weeks ago when Cam Coleman went in the portal and Malcolm Simmons and all these other guys went in the portal, I was very critical of Auburn. But I will say I've sort of come around on Byron Brown. And I've come around on the idea that enough of the defense has returned where it should still be really good. And you add Byron Brown with some of the receivers and the guys and the this and the that from USF. I think Auburn has a chance to be pretty good. Now, the schedule is insane. We're going to 9 SEC games next year. You have to go to Georgia. You have to go to Alabama in your two big rivalry games. But man, oh man, I will tell you, bigger picture, I love Byron Brown. I think he's going to be really good. And yeah, don't really have much to add here because, again, this news broke probably 20 minutes before we went on air. Speaking of news that broke right before we went on air, Aaron Philo, backup at Georgia Tech this year, officially just announced that he is going to Florida. Now, I'll tell you a quick side story. Somebody from the Philo camp, his orbit, reached out to me a few days ago. And I didn't see it until this morning, but he basically said, Torres, you're on top of it because Aaron Philo was projected to commit to Florida. Aaron Philo did commit to Florida. Okay, so Aaron Philo was the backup at Georgia Tech. One of the most prolific quarterbacks in Georgia high school football history. Again, we talked about it the other day. I'll let the Georgia high school football experts break down the film, but this guy was like historic in Georgia high school football. Goes to Georgia Tech, backs up Haynes King. The expectation is he is going to be the starter at Georgia Tech. But Buster Faulkner, the offensive coordinator, leaves Georgia Tech for Florida, that OC position, and Aaron Philo follows him. This is not surprising. This, by the way, is why DJ Lagway is, as of right now, still in the portal. DJ Lagway, we talked about him when he entered. He basically was told, for lack of a better term, you're not welcome back. We're going in a different direction. By the way, producer Matt doing some great stuff here. Aaron Philo was Georgia high school football's all-time passing leader at 13,922 yards, a record previously held by Drum roll, please. Trevor freaking Lawrence. 159 TD passes in his career, 56 in one season. That's unbelievable. I mean, those are like made up Madden stats. 56 touchdown passes, and what are we even talking about? I might have to get myself an Philo jersey. All right, that's what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. When we do, there's more football news, actually. Kyle Whittingham had a huge Monday. We'll discuss everything that happened for him, and we'll kind of put a bow on all this quarterback stuff because the Ty Simpson Tennessee rumors will not go away. Everything you need to know. Quick break. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute, but before we do, I have so many people that reach out and say, Torres, you give me hours and hours and hours of free content every day, every month, every year. What can I do to help support the show? Well, you want to support the show and look good in the process. Make sure to check out and support the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. Some of you wondering, what can I get in that merch store, Torres? Well, Kentucky fans, we got our Mark Pope Hope and Pope t-shirts. That is right. Mark Pope, monster first year. Year 2 is going to be even better. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirt at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is coming. It is here. John Calipari has things rocking. Get your Big Pig Invasion tees. Again, aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. St. John's fans, we have our Big Rick Energy t-shirts. And if you're just a college basketball fan in general, guess what? Your March is for Day Drinking shirt. That is the shirt that you need year-round, but especially for the next NCAA tournament. You can order yours now. By the way, football fans, we got you covered too. Nebraska fans, new era, new rules, the t-shirt that you need before the start of this coming season. And oh, by the way, if you're a Colorado fan, if you're just a Coach Prime fan, we have our Dion shirts and hats, more of them than we know what to do with. So to check out the full line of Aaron Torres Media merch and also support the show, good news is we're going to have even more for the fall. Check out the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. And for more information, you can always reach out at Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. So, Matt, you can pull up any interesting questions or comments. We will always prioritize super chats. Before we do, though, a couple quick things. One, I mentioned we have started an email newsletter in your inbox every day. This time of year, you need it. It's Inside College Sports. Nobody's doing anything like it. The big portal stories, the big NIL stories, all the stuff that falls through the cracks. You can see the link there. It's completely free to sign up for. You don't need to pay a dime. It's free. It just comes to your inbox and you're like, oh, I didn't know that Aaron Philo committed to Florida. Oh, I didn't know that this happened. College Sports, Inside College Sports with Aaron Torres, Inside College Sports. That link is available. Before we get to your questions and comments, before we get to Michigan, you know what I got to do? I thank our friends and our ticketing partners, SeatGeek and the SeatGeek app. Okay, so SeatGeek is America's #1 ticketing app. Over 28 million downloads. Great app. And what I love about SeatGeek is two things. First of all, they tell you about every single ticket on the app. Green dot means go ahead and purchase. Red dot means stay away. Every ticket rated 1 through 10 on the app. But you know why I really love SeatGeek? It is because they take care of listeners of the Aaron Torres pod. This is all you got to do. Go to SeatGeek.com or the SeatGeek app. If you use promo code Torres, that's promo code TORRES, you get $20 off your first purchase. SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres gets you $20 off your first purchase. That is for any game. So if you're whatever, it doesn't matter who you're a fan of. Any game, any show, concerts, whatever. If there are tickets available on SeatGeek, you can get $20 off your first purchase with SeatGeek, SeatGeek app. Again, concerts, shows, football, basketball, baseball. SeatGeek, promo code Torres. SeatGeek app, promo code Torres. With that said, Matt, by the way, any quick thoughts or questions before we get to all the latest with Michigan, Ty Simpson, And there is one unfortunate basketball story that we do have to get to. Aaron, with seemingly the big guys at quarterback going elsewhere, possibly, do you think Miami Hurricanes should target in the portal? Carson is graduating and going to the NFL. Anthony, we appreciate you, man. One, enjoy the ride. I hate to say it. I think a lot of people are rooting for Ole Miss given everything. It's a great question. The one thing I will say, and I've said this a million times, by the way, Matt would remember this. I forced Matt to do a segment on Carson Beck last year. There was some weird story. And Matt's like, it's a non-story. Why are we talking about this? And I said, I think he's going to enter the portal. And 2 days later, he entered the portal and he committed to Miami, okay? And so what I would say is this. I've been covering college sports long enough to know great recruiters always find a way to get dudes, right? In basketball right now, maybe you miss on the high school guys, you go to the portal. You miss on the portal guys, you go to the international game. You miss on international guys, apparently you just go to the G League, okay? But the point I'm trying to make is great recruiters, they always get their guys. And with Mario Cristobal, he is too good of a recruiter to not end up landing the guy that he wants out of the portal, okay? And what I would say is a couple things. Is one, he's moved late the last 2 years. Remember, Cam Ward was in the NFL draft. He's the first player. It was the reverse. He declared for the draft, and then before he actually sent in the paperwork, Miami convinced him to come back to college. And then Carson Beck, like I said last year, everyone said he was going pro. And so Miami's going to have the money. I think the other thing is, if they had missed the playoffs and gone 9-3 and whatever, I think it would have been hard for Mario Cristobal to go to his boosters or whoever and say, we need more money. But he's in the college football freaking semifinals this week. He could be playing for so whatever money he needs, he'll get. And so now just the question becomes, who is that quarterback? Sam Leavitt, if he doesn't commit on his visit this week to LSU, I would think that Miami would be a factor there. Miami was linked to him early. DJ Lagway, by the way, quiet. Listen, I'm a DJ Lagway believer. Maybe I shouldn't be. But he's going to need a home because remember, with DJ Lagway, he visited Florida State this past week. Florida State just took Ashton Daniels at quarterback. Ashton Daniels has 1 year of eligibility. He's not going there to be a backup. So Florida State's off the board. DJ Lagway still needs to find a home. Dylan Raiola, I've heard no buzz at all about. Now, you can decide how good he is and if he's worth the money. But you go on and on down the list. I sit there and say they're going to find a guy. Ty Simpson, we're going to get to him in a minute. So I wouldn't worry about Mario Cristobal. I guess that's the theme of the conversation. I would not worry about Mario Cristobal. He's going to find his quarterback. And, shout out to you, Anthony. By the way, love Miami. We're starting to plan our summer trips. Fort Lauderdale is a must stop in the Miami area. Matt, any other questions, comments before we get to the rest of the show? There's still a lot of football to get to. When Kiffin comes to Oxford next year to open SEC play, it's going to be wild. Kiffin might want to coach that game from the air. I assume when you say the air, you mean the booth. I mean, think about this. Remember when Lane Kiffin went back to Knoxville? And that was like 10 years after he left Tennessee. Mustard bottles, golf balls were thrown at him, which is actually kind of scary in hindsight. But Oxford's going to be crazy next year. Is it officially the SEC opener? I don't know if that's officially been announced or not, but that'd be pretty freaking cool if it was. We'll see what ends up happening. That would definitely be that ESPN night game. But either way, that will be maybe the best atmosphere in all of college football next year. Matt is currently looking up to see if it is actually the opener. Okay. So we have the opener is officially Lane Kiffin, LSU visiting Ole Miss, and he references as well. There is also an SEC opener between two first-year head coaches from the American, John Summerall at Florida, Alex Golesh at Auburn. Anything else before we move on? Last one. With Will Stein as the head coach, no one is out of UK's league anymore, especially if Oregon wins out. So when Will Stein had Sam Leavitt on campus this weekend, I really thought about this. I remember the number of times that I would talk about Mark Stoops in the summer, in the fall, and there was such not a defeatist. Defeatist is probably the right word, but it's also not the right word. There was just a sadness of we'll never be able to get out of this contract. Now, credit to me because I said, he will at some point take a negotiated buyout. I don't care how much he's owed. Nobody wants to show up for a job where you're actively hated. No one wants to show up for a job where you're hated by the people that's, are supposed to be supporting you. And so once Mark Stoops was out, I give credit. Will Stein, he's an offensive guy. He's a young guy. You got to remember, he has relationships with all these kids from recruiting them at Oregon. And I think what's going to be interesting going forward, apparently Kentucky just has way more money in NIL than we realize, right? I mean, that was the big story. Well, once you pay Mark Stoops' buyout and Kentucky's football is going to get this much percentage of the rev share, or Kentucky's basketball is going to get a huge percentage of the rev share, maybe they just took all Mark Pope's money and they were like, sorry, dude, beat somebody good and we'll give you some money back for next year. But whatever it is, this is a best case scenario for Kentucky. It really is. Now, it's all going to be determined between the white lines when the games get played. But I think I can predict a segment that I will do sometime in July and August. The segment will be titled, "We don't know about Will Stein yet, but he has done everything right so far." That is my prediction, is that we're going to sit back in August and be like, great staff, great roster. The offense looks good on paper. And then it's just going to be whether he takes care of business once the games get played or not. But I think, Mark, you should be excited. I think UK fans should be excited as well. Now, the basketball team, that's another conversation, which we'll discuss here in a little bit. However, there is still way more football to discuss. And so let's keep the conversation going. And I want to talk about a team that really, made a major splash with the hire. And then it's been a quiet couple days since then. And that's the Michigan Wolverines, or at least it was a quiet couple days until Monday. And so with Michigan, listen, again, same thing we talked about with Lane Kiffin a minute ago. We've done the segment on Kyle Whittingham. We've done the segment. Listen, I'll say this. I don't think there was a more universally revered hire in anywhere in college football than Kyle Whittingham going to Michigan. And again, we did the whole segment on why it was the right fit, how frankly lucky Michigan got that he was available that late in the calendar, okay? But at the same time, what also stands out is it's a great hire on paper, but you have to execute once you actually get on campus. But the positive is the roster's loaded, and it's all about putting together the right staff, and it's about retention. Well, I bring it up because probably over the last 24 to 36 hours, a ton of news has come out of Michigan. It's all positive. And if I was a Michigan fan, I can't do the clap because I got to hold the mic, but hail to the victors. You should be excited, people. There's a lot to discuss. First of all, listen, this news itself is pretty old, but I just want to spend half a second on it because I do think it's noteworthy. We haven't discussed it. The staff has come together, and it is pretty much exactly what you were hoping for if you were a Michigan fan. By the way, Michigan fans, we do have our new Torres on Michigan Twitter account, Torres on Michigan. All you got to do, just search Torres on Michigan. If you're on Twitter, all the late-breaking Michigan news that you need, Torres on Michigan. By the way, you can email me, Aaron Torres, podcast questions. We need an intern to help us run it. But it all came down to the staff. It didn't all come down to the staff, but the staff was going to be an important part. And you started to hear names, and then there were reports that some of the names might not happen. Well, the staff is complete. Kyle Whittingham, A++. First of all, the offensive coordinator from Utah, Jason Beck, followed him from Utah. Now, there was early speculation. Could he stay? Could he look to go somewhere else? I know he's following Kyle Whittingham. That is important. That is noteworthy. By the way, Matt, did I send you the tweet on the staff or no? If we do, you could pop it up. It's all right here. We're not going to go person for person. But Jason Beck, remember, and that was from our Torres on Michigan account. Jason Beck, remember, top 5 offense at New Mexico a couple years ago, top 10 offense in 1 year at Utah, number 2 ranked rushing attack with the number 1 yards per carry. So you want to get a Michigan fan fired up. Talk about running the ball in the trenches. Quite literally, essentially, nobody did it better than Utah last year. Well, that offensive coordinator is coming. I think it's also worth noting Jim Harding, the O-line coach, he's been with Kyle Whittingham for 12 years, is coming with them. Listen, I'll defer to Cole Kubelik and Jeff Schwartz on who has the best offensive line play and coaches in college football. But what I will tell you, universally revered, universally respected, universally loved. Tony Alford at running backs coach, that's important. We'll get to that in a minute. But defensively, Jay Hill, defensive coordinator. Remember, this guy was at BYU, ton of success. BYU had like a top 10 defense 2 years ago, really good this year. They finished 12-2 on the season, only losses to Texas Tech. Well, he ends up coming to Michigan as well. There were reports early he was coming. Then there were reports he might stay at BYU. The staff is complete. Ultimately, though, the staff means nothing if you don't have the right players. But the good news is most of the good players were already in the building. And so we're not going to go player by player again. But this goes back to what I said when Kyle Whittingham was hired, and essentially any of these guys, is to me, we used to, in college football, talk about the 5-year plan. What are you going to do when you get all your guys in? There's no more 5-year plan. I call it the 5-week plan now. In other words, you get in the building. Who are you hiring? Who are you retaining? And can you keep a good recruiting class together if the previous coach has put together a good recruiting class? Well, I bring it up because Kyle Whittingham's 5-week plan is underway. And again, to quote the old Seinfeld episode, it is real. And people, it is spectacular. The first big piece of news came Monday night late. Bryce Underwood, he was the linchpin. Former number 1 quarterback, class of 2025, this and that. He announces, hail to the, I'm coming back, baby. LFG, let's freaking go. 147. Michigan does team by team. So remember a couple years ago when they won the championship, it was team 143, I believe. Well, I bring it up because guess what? Team 147, Bryce Underwood is back. Now, listen, I know what a non-Michigan fan is going to say. Bryce Underwood wasn't even that good. Well, listen, I'm going to defend Bryce Underwood because as I've said since the day Sharon Moore got fired, listen, Sharon Moore's got some issues that he's got to deal with. We're not here to make fun, make light, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But what I will say very seriously is I can't judge Bryce Underwood because look at who was coaching him last year. I'm not trying to be funny. I know lives were ruined and impacted and changed forever. But Sharon Moore was seemingly focused on everything other than coaching football. And so forgive me. It's hard for me to blame Bryce Underwood when he's a true freshman being named the starter, a lot of money being thrown his way. And oh, by the way, he's got to deal with this coach who clearly is more interested in scrolling on Instagram than he is coaching football. So like I said, I've said it a few times now. I give Bryce Underwood a hall pass, right? We all know what a hall pass is. You know, your significant other, something happens, you don't ask about it, you don't talk about it. That's how I feel about Bryce Underwood. I know it happened. We're not going to talk about it. We're going to pretend it didn't happen because I can't blame Bryce Underwood for what Sharon Moore was doing in outside. And so again, give him an offensive coordinator, give him real head coaching, give him a coach who is focused on football and not Instagram. I think he's going to be really good. You know what else also helps a quarterback? A really good O-line. And the one thing, if I'm going to joke about Sharon Moore, I got to give him credit. A lot of talented offensive linemen in the building. First big piece of news was Bryce Underwood on Monday. Later on in the evening, Blake Frazier announces his return to Michigan. Do you know who Blake Frazier is? If you don't, it's okay. He was the starting left tackle the last 8 games of the season. And by the way, for all the criticism of Sharon Moore, 2 things. They won 9 games last year. And then 2 on top of that, let's also remember this. It was one of the youngest teams in college football. And so everybody focuses on the true freshman, Bryce Underwood at quarterback. But as I've said, 3 of their offensive linemen were redshirt freshmen this past season, including starting left tackle Blake Frazier. He's back, and they still won 9 games. And he's going to get great coaching under Jim Harding. And guess what? Another big tackle announced he was coming back on Monday night. Andrew Babalola, I want to say, I forgive me. Not great with names. Andrew Babalola, if you're not familiar with his game, 5-star class of 2025, one of the best offensive linemen in last year's high school class, commits to Michigan, gets hurt in fall camp. But this is a guy that if he had entered the portal, probably would have been the number 1 offensive tackle available, and Kyle Whittingham retains him. And so you're talking about a potential, for lack of a better term, franchise quarterback. You're talking about 2 potential franchise offensive linemen. You're talking about an elite coaching staff. And I think there's also a couple other notes on Michigan. Now, Matt, I didn't send you these notes, so it is what it is. And that's on me. But one, when Kyle Whittingham got hired, right? The big question is, okay, it's going to be sort of easier, you would think, to retain the guys in the building already. By the way, I got a terrible itch on my nose. I'm sorry that I keep scratching it, but you're going to keep your guys, right? But can you hold together a top 10 recruiting class in all of college football? Carter Meadows, we've talked about, number 1 edge rusher in high school football. No reason to think he's not coming. He's already verbally said whatever. But I saw this the other day. Savion Hyder, who's the number 1 running back in high school football, was committed to Michigan. There was a little bit of hesitation. Tony Alford, who was his recruiter on the previous staff, was retained by Kyle Whittingham. And not only is Savion Hyder coming, he's already on campus. I saw some stuff, him posting on Instagram from campus. He's arrived. He ain't going anywhere. So you have him. And then I think here's the great part. Most of the roster is young. It's largely already set, and you can just go cherry pick guys out of the transfer portal, which brings me to the other day we talked about this guy, John Henry Daly. That doesn't sound like a football player or potentially, I won't say it. Some Abraham Lincoln things, were popping in my head right there. John Henry Daly. If you're not familiar with his name, if you're not familiar with his game, he was an All-American this past year at Utah. You want some stats? I'm going to give you some stats. 17 and a half TFLs. 17 and a half TFLs. Oh, by the way, 11 and a half sacks. The crazy part, he didn't even play the entire season. He got hurt with like a game and a half to go. All-American, all Big 12, in the transfer portal. And speaking of all indications are that he is going to end up at Michigan. So the staff is together. Bryce Underwood is there. The O-line is intact. The high school class is intact. And oh, by the way, Kyle Whittingham is going to do some work in the portal. And I'll wrap by saying this because this is something I said when he got the job. I said, if you can keep the roster together, and you're not going to keep everybody, but if you keep the roster together, if you can keep the recruiting class largely together, this might be the most talented team that Kyle Whittingham has ever coached. And remember, they're still kind of a year away. Bryce Underwood is still going to be a true sophomore next year. A lot of freshmen are going to play big minutes or big snaps next year. So I just bring it up. This is going to be the most talented team that Kyle Whittingham has probably ever coached. And it could be even better in 2027. We're going to focus on 2026. The schedule is really tough for people who have not seen it. But when you talk about things going about as well for Kyle Whittingham as they possibly could have, doesn't get much better than this. Really quickly, one more football story. Then I want to get to one basketball story, and then we'll get out of here. Loaded show today. So much good content. Thank you all. Make sure to click that little like button, subscribe to the newsletter, all that good stuff. All right. Let's go ahead and switch gears. Talked about all the quarterback chess pieces moving around. Aaron Philo, Byron Brown, Kenny Minchey. Well, I bring it up because there is one name that isn't even in the portal yet. By the way, we're recording here at noon Eastern, so that's subject to change. I always say, you never know, subject to change. But I bring it up because there is one name that certainly everybody is intrigued by. That's Ty Simpson. Okay, so we talked about this a little bit on Sunday, but Ty Simpson, interesting arc. I don't know how to properly contextualize it, right? Season starts, bad loss to Florida State, momentum starts building. You beat Wisconsin, you beat Georgia, you beat Vandy, Missouri, Tennessee, and all of a sudden, Ty Simpson is a Heisman Trophy candidate. I believe at one point it was 20 touchdowns, 1 interception, well over 70% completion percentage. But back half of the season, back quarter of the season, not great against LSU, lose to Oklahoma, struggle against Auburn. And by the end of the year, you kind of knew, not a Heisman Trophy contender. And oh, by the way, maybe not the first round draft pick that we thought. I think probably if you had asked people October 1st, he's going pro. He's a top 5 pick, one of the top quarterbacks off the board. But as the season went on, a couple things happened. One, you saw he was a little bit limited. But two, let's defend Ty Simpson. It's not all his fault, especially that the O-line stunk and couldn't block anybody. And so the end of the year, it's kind of this worst case scenario. The O-line can't block. You can't run the ball because the O-line can't block. And then also you have a quarterback who's somewhat limited athletically, and he's being asked to do way too much. I don't blame Alabama's struggles late on Ty Simpson, but you can't deny that the struggles happen. Well, I bring it up, and we talked about all this on Sunday, but I'm giving context for people who don't fully understand, because as we go into the offseason, and Alabama is in their offseason, the assumption is that Ty Simpson is not going to be back even though he has eligibility. Why is that? Well, one, he could just go pro. But two, Keelan Russell, who him and Bryce Underwood were basically 1 and 1A in that high school class a year ago as far as quarterbacks are concerned, Keelan Russell is waiting in the wings. And we know it's this delicate balance in 2025, 2026 of how to build a roster. You can bring in a quarterback. You can bring him in as a freshman and maybe redshirt him. But by year 2, unless the kid is named Arch Manning, he expects to be on the field. And so it's this push-pull of, do you push the veteran out the door to bring in the young guy? Or if you keep the veteran, then there's a chance the young guy enters the portal. So the bottom line is, at some point, it kind of became obvious that, you're probably not going to keep them both. Keelan Russell is not going to back up Ty Simpson next year. By the way, Austin Mack in the Rose Bowl looked better than Ty Simpson. And Austin Mack was technically the backup this year. So the conversation becomes, what's next for Ty Simpson? Over the weekend, we talked about it. Tom Loy, a recruiting writer, was the first to kind of insinuate that Ty Simpson could enter the transfer portal and that Tennessee and Oregon would be in the mix. Yes, I know, if you're a Tennessee fan, why did it take so long to get to the point? The point is, I'm giving everyone background on why Ty Simpson would even consider entering the portal, okay? Well, I bring it up because over the last couple days, that smoke has turned into a flat-out inferno, okay? Because over the last couple days, I would argue, I think he's maybe the most plugged-in person in the world of college football. Chris Lowe, who is also, if I understand correctly, a Tennessee alum, he kind of had some stuff to say about the Ty Simpson rumors. So this was on the RTI, the Rocky Top Insider podcast. He said, quote, Matt, if we have the board, you can pop it up. He said, quote, I think without question, Tennessee is calling the portal for a quarterback. The one that's most intriguing, and Bama fans and Tennessee fans are going to sit up straight when I say this, is Ty Simpson. I do believe Ty Simpson will. I do not believe, big difference, I do not believe Ty Simpson will be back at Alabama next year. I think he's gone. I think it's either he's going to the pros and entering the draft, or I think he's going to go into the portal. There was more that I forgot to send Matt, a lot on my plate and a lot on Matt's plate on Tuesday morning. But here was more of what Chris Lowe said on the RTI podcast. I think this time, if he decides to transfer, his decision, we can go on and on. It's going to be either NFL draft or portal. If the feedback is emphatic of you're going to slide in the second round, then I think he's going to look seriously at transferring. And if he does, then I think he lands at Tennessee. I want to repeat that. If he's going to get a second round grade, quote, I think he's going to look seriously at transferring. And if he does, then I think he lands at Tennessee. I think Oregon is the other school that I've heard the most about. But if he does transfer, I think you're going to see Ty Simpson as Tennessee's quarterback next year. All right. So there you have it. Chris Lowe, who I would argue is as plugged in as anybody in college football, certainly in Knoxville, certainly at Tennessee. He says he thinks Ty Simpson is going to be the quarterback at Tennessee. And I'll be real. I think Ty Simpson is going to be the quarterback at Tennessee as well. First of all, from the Ty Simpson perspective, I think we have to accept this world that if you're not going to be a first-round pick in the NFL, and if you have eligibility, at this point, the decision is to come back to college, right? Now, circumstantial. You need to make sure you have a landing spot. But you go back a few years ago, Will Howard was going to go 6th, 7th round. Oh, I can make whatever it was, $1.5-2 million at Ohio State. Boom, I'm coming back. It doesn't matter who. But the point is, at this point, financially, it makes the most sense. And beyond that, here's the other thing. You get another year to develop before you go to once you go to the NFL, it's hit or miss. And if you're not drafted in the first round, here's the other part. Forget the financial stuff. The team is not invested in you big picture. In other words, you're just another disposable asset to them. Nobody drafts a quarterback in the second round hoping that that guy one day becomes his starter, that team's starter. You're a backup. You might always be a backup. You might never get a shot. If you do get a shot, it might be with a bad team, whatever. Nobody drafts a quarterback in the second round hoping to start him, let alone in week one. So we have to live in a world where if you're not a first-round pick, you're probably going to come back to college. And then for Ty Simpson, we laid out why I don't think it's going to be at Alabama. And then you start looking at options. I think Tennessee makes by far the most sense to me, okay? First of all, he's from the town of Martin, Tennessee. We know his dad is obviously the football coach at that university, UT Martin. But beyond that, he has ties to Tennessee. Remember, he was recruited by Tennessee. He basically picked Alabama over Tennessee. Now, the part that I keep laughing about, he was actually recruited by Jeremy Pruitt and his staff. And so I keep laughing because I remember the tweet that I saw over the weekend. It's like, you want to talk about a dude that's evolved for life? This guy was willing to put his career in Jeremy Pruitt's hands. So it shows you the guy loves Tennessee. But listen, Tennessee, it makes sense for them as well. First of all, they need a quarterback. We'll get into the quarterback depth chart in a minute. They also just need players. And again, always subject to change. It's 12:07 Eastern time. Tennessee fans are not happy with Josh Heupel right now. They feel like he's moving too slow. He's not making enough moves in the portal. Why does this school get this and that school get that? And I'm not even saying Tennessee fans are wrong. What I'm just saying is he needs a splash, but he also needs a quarterback. Joey Aguilar, unless something has changed that I'm not aware of, he's out of eligibility. And by the way, we saw he's kind of limited this year, had his moments, but was never great. Faison Brandon is coming in as a 5-star in this current high school class of 2026, but you don't want to throw him into the fire. George McIntyre probably isn't as good. Merklinger, who obviously became a household name when who left over the spring, he's in the transfer portal. You need a quarterback. And oh, by the way, Josh Heupel, never forget, what was Tennessee, 8-5 this year? 0 wins over teams that ended up being ranked or even halfway decent. I believe the stat was 0 wins over teams that finished with a winning record in the Power 5. Josh Heupel, next he cannot go into next year without having a more concrete quarterback situation than hoping that Faison Brandon is ready to go. And so I could go on, but at this point, I think it's going to happen. I don't know when. I don't know how long these grades take, but to me, I just think it makes sense for both sides. Ty Simpson has eligibility. I'll say this too, and we talked about it on Sunday's show. I think the fit makes sense because I think Ty Simpson would be actually very good in the Heupel system. The Heupel system is all about getting the ball out, quick reads, decision-making, being smart, being accurate. Who was the best quarterback that Heupel's ever had at Tennessee? It was Hendon Hooker. Older, smart, took care of the football, quick decision-maker, got the ball out. Doesn't that sound like Ty Simpson? Now, Hendon Hooker was a little bit bigger, a little bit more athletic. I'd be all in, and I give credit to Tennessee fans. It feels like they are all in on this possibility as well. So, as of right now, 12:09 Eastern time, Ty Simpson is not in the portal, and maybe we'll go pro. I think he's coming back to Tennessee. Chris Lowe thinks he's coming back to college, and it will be Tennessee. And I'll tell you what, the best place to keep updated on all things Tennessee is our Torres on the Vols Twitter page. If you are a Tennessee fan, it is a must follow. Torres on the Vols. All right, so what we're going to do, show's going long, as always. We're going to take one more break. I have one basketball story to get to. Oh, you thought things were bad for the Kentucky Wildcats? You ain't seen nothing yet. Something crazy came out on Monday. Quick break. Be right back. Back to the show in a minute, but before we do, you know what we got to do. We got to thank our friends. We got to thank our partners. We got to go ahead and thank Cauley Puffs and CauleyPuffs.com. Yeah, you see the logo on the back of the screen right here. Okay, so I've told you all about Cauley Puffs, but family-owned company, not far from where I live. Joey, a huge sports fan. And one day he was sitting on the couch and he said, you know what? I need a snack that is both healthy but delicious, something my kids are going to love, something my family's going to love, something I'm going to love. And so he came up with Cauley Puffs. This is the new age health food snack. You don't need to go to the grocery aisle and buy all that crap, the Doritos, the Fritos. No, my friends, you need Cauley Puffs. Baked, not fried, avocado oil, no grease, healthy ingredients. But here's the best part. They taste freaking delicious. Actually, there's another best part. In addition to tasting delicious, in addition to being healthy, they are also taking care of listeners of the Aaron Torres pod. Okay, so check this out. All you got to do is go to caulipuffs.com. That's CAULIPUFFS.com, caulipuffs.com, and you can get 15% off any purchase with the promo code Torres. That's Torres, Torres. It's that simple. 15% off any purchase. One bag to try them out, 100 bags to cater a party. Doesn't really matter. Promo code Torres. Caulipuffs.com gets you 15% off. Caulipuffs also available on Amazon. You obviously can't get the promo code there, but Caulipuffs.com, promo code Torres gets you 15% off any purchase. Thank you to our friends at Caulipuffs. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. Final segment of the show. So good to be back. By the way, I see people going at it in the chat. It's like the old days with Kentucky and Arkansas fans back in the day. Speaking of Kentucky, do have one basketball story. Monday night, a little bit of a quieter day in the world of college hoops. Nebraska won again. Apparently, Nebraska is just a juggernaut now. By the way, still the only team that has never won, at least among the power conferences, one tournament game. Probably will end this year. They're trending towards like a top 4 seed. USC got boat raced by Michigan State. I actually think USC is good, but Rodney Rice is out for the year. Elijah Arenas, we don't know what's going on. Just poor Muss is just dealing with all sorts of injuries. But let's focus on what is actually, in my opinion, by the way, Tuesday night, we might do a show tomorrow. Louisville plays Duke, no Mikael Brown, whatever. All right. So there is one basketball story I want to get to. And I do think transparently, it's the biggest story in all of college basketball. What is going on with the Kentucky Wildcats and what is going on with Mark Pope? And at this point, we've done so many segments, talked so much about it. We don't need to go through all of the details and what's wrong and all this and all that. But I mean, it is pretty shocking that Kentucky is 9-5, that Kentucky is ever 9-5, period. That they're 9-5. They now have 4 games in which they were down by 20 plus points in those games. By the way, the stat I heard from my buddy Jack Pilgrim, 8 of Mark Pope's 50 games, Kentucky has trailed by 20 plus points. Not very good. And obviously, look, why it's not good is not just because it's Kentucky, not just because it's a blue blood, not just because of the history, not just because of the 8 national championships. By the way, remember how much Mark Pope was talking about number 9 in the preseason? Yeah, okay. It's because we know what was spent on the roster. And we don't have to go through, but we all know, reported by the Lexington Herald Leader, it was $22 million. And so when you put together that kind of roster at that price, it is national championship or bust. Now, it's always national championship or bust in Lexington, but I think you can argue this year there were no excuses, right? Pope gets the job 2 years ago. He puts together a great roster in the spring on short notice, and you'd think with a full offseason that he'd be able to put together something better. Instead, the team is terrible. They're 9-5. And I think the Alabama game was a little bit of a crossroads moment because you built a little momentum going into winter break, going into Christmas, going into the new year. 4 straight wins, the win over St. John's, the win over Indiana. And even if those teams aren't very good, you still say, can we get some momentum going into SEC play? Instead, you come out completely flat. You come out unprepared. All of the same problems. The players look disinterested. The coach isn't even starting the best players. You get blown out early. It isn't close. You sort of rally, but you still lose in the manner that you lose. Now, what made it even worse was a couple things. One, Mark Pope is doing himself zero favors with every piece of media availability that he has. And by the way, I know people are wondering, why are we talking about this? We're going to get to the news from Monday in a second. But every media appearance he has, it gets worse and worse. He's getting shorter and shorter with his answers. He's not being clear with what's going on, why he's making the decisions that he does. I think the big question now, why are you not starting your best players? Jalen Lowe coming off the bench. Jaden Quaintance, I believe, came off the bench last week, but last game, I should say. But I just bring it up because, he's giving these long, non sequitur answers that don't even make sense. Anyway, brutal with the media, brutal on the court. His call-in show, his coach's show on Monday was apparently a train wreck. I've only seen clips. I haven't heard the whole thing. It's really bad, okay? And I saw a stat that actually makes me think that it might get worse and not ever better this year, okay? So, excuse me. We have all sorts of advanced analytics in college basketball right now. Ken Pomeroy, Evan Mia, Bart Torvik, all that. And we don't need to get into who does what and all that, but they kind of are predictive metrics on what's going to happen the rest of the year. Well, I bring it up because let's give credit to, I believe it's Kentucky Hoops Magic on Twitter, who found this. They said it was from Evan Mia, although I think it was actually from Bart Torvik. But either way, one of the advanced analytics sites said, quote, Kentucky is currently projected to finish 7-11 in SEC play and miss the NCAA tournament for the second time in 6 years. Again, he said it was from Evan Mia. I think it was from Bart Torvik, but 7-11 in SEC play, plus what were they? 9-4. So what does that come out to? 20-15 overall. Miss the NCAA tournament. I don't even think it's 20-15. Is that math right? I don't know, but whatever. Wouldn't it be good? 7-11 with the resume they have. I don't think we'll get them into the tournament. Not good. As far as this team is concerned, listen, let me say this. I do think in defense of Kentucky, it's too early to give up on anything, okay? You're in the SEC, and even if the SEC is down, you have opportunities to get the wins that you need to make the tournament. It's funny. I'm not trying to do this, but I think it's it's a fair comparison. I remember last year when Arkansas started 0-5 in SEC play, or what was it? 1-5, 0-5, whatever. And I said, like, at some point you do have to start winning games, but if you win them, there are wins left on the schedule. Well, Kentucky's got to get to work, okay? Because the gift and the curse of the SEC this year, the league isn't as good. There's not, last year was basically in the SEC, any win you got was a quad one opportunity. But the counter to that was the games were harder, but if you won them, they were still quad one games, and there's still plenty of opportunity for Kentucky. The SEC isn't great, but you look across the board, Georgia's playing well, Vandy's playing well, Missouri comes to Rupp with a good record here on Wednesday night. You go on and on down the list. That doesn't include Alabama. That doesn't include Arkansas. There are plenty of opportunities to get wins. And what I will say is, the good news is, even if you're not that good, essentially every game is winnable. Now, at Bud Walton's going to be tough. I believe they play at Tennessee. That's going to be tough. But again, there's nobody on the schedule that you can't beat. The counter to that is, I don't know that we've seen anything that makes us think that they should be able to beat the better teams, right? You just played Alabama. It wasn't close. Arkansas is clearly better. Tennessee, even though they're not great, is better. But again, the counter to that is the SEC is also a little bit down. Florida stinks. I'm sorry. Florida just stinks. You go on and on down the list. I'm trying to think of everybody else in this league. Auburn, not right at Auburn. Tahad Pettiford was just benched the other day. They lost to Georgia. So I only bring it up because it's kind of a gift and a curse. There are plenty of wins to be had. Enough of them are quad one, quad two. You can get into the tournament. I think the issue becomes, what have we seen that proves that this team can actually get those wins, can go into SEC road environments and get those W's? Well, I think it starts, one, you got to start your best players. You certainly have to hope Jalen Lowe stays healthy. You certainly have to hope Jaden Quaintance plays more like he did against St. John's than against Alabama, although I don't really blame him. And I do think it's on the coaching staff. Listen, for all the criticism, there's enough talent in that building because we saw it against St. John's, because we saw it against Indiana, because we know that Jaden Quaintance is going to be a lottery pick, because we know that Jalen Lowe can be one of the best point guards in this sport. And so the talent is there to at least make the NCAA tournament. I think the question is, can you rack up enough wins? And I think the bigger question is, honestly, are guys just going to start quitting on the season, quitting on Mark Pope? There's a lot of older players. There's a lot of players that, frankly, are probably going to be in the portal after this year. I mean, some of them just flat out aren't good enough. We don't need to name names now, but I think there's others that are going to say that even have eligibility, like, I'm not going to be here next year, so why am I going to go, you know what, to the wall? So I think it will be an interesting story to monitor. And I will tell you this. I have not given up on Kentucky making the NCAA tournament, but I'll tell you what, the next 2 weeks or so, I think are going to tell everything, because Kentucky, listen, for all the criticism and for as tough as the schedule will eventually get, the next couple games in SEC play, you got to start winning games. Okay. So really about 5 of the next 6, in my opinion, are winnable. Okay. Of the next 6, you have Missouri at home on Wednesday night. Missouri is good. They have talent. Mark Mitchell's pretty good, but they're 11-3 overall. They got destroyed by Kansas. They lost to a bad Notre Dame team. You look at Missouri, they barely beat what I don't think is a very good Florida team. They got destroyed by Illinois. I don't think Missouri's good. Got destroyed by the 2 best teams they played, who are also their biggest rivals, Illinois and Kansas, okay? So you have Missouri at home. Then you have Mississippi State at home. Josh Hubbard, the legend. Other than him, there ain't very much on that roster. Mississippi State itself is 9-5. Lost to San Francisco in the out of conference. Lost to SMU, who's actually very good. I shouldn't criticize SMU. But lost to New Mexico. Lost to a decent but not great K-State team. You got to beat Mississippi State. Then you play LSU on the road. Listen, I'm a Matt McMahon guy. De'Don Thomas is really good. They're 12-2. But again, they lost their SEC opener on Saturday night as well. I think LSU is very much a byproduct of a bad out-of-conference slate. So those 3 you have to get. I mean, it's non-negotiable. You have to be 4-1 going into a game at Tennessee in a couple weeks. Maybe you have some momentum, even if you don't win that game, whatever. But then after that, you have 2 more winnable games after that. After Tennessee, Texas at home, Ole Miss at home. Listen, I like Sean Miller. I don't really think he's got it figured out there just yet. They're 9-5 overall. He had some weird press conference quote where he basically said, like, I've been telling these guys for months, they're not listening. There's only so much I could do. You can find the quote. He said, he's like, it's on me as a coach. I'm not blaming my players. But at a certain point, when you tell somebody something over and over and over and over and over again, and they don't listen, at some point that's on them. So you have Texas. Ole Miss is the same. Chris Beard just publicly crushing his players like these guys don't care. So, I mean, there is the world where you can be 3-1 going into the Tennessee game in SEC play. And even if you lose the Tennessee game, you can be 5-2 going into late January. Now, it does get much tougher once you get past January, because at that point you have 2 games against Vandy, which is actually a very good team. You have Arkansas on the road. Yeah, you're probably not winning that one, but maybe, just maybe, if you have some momentum, who knows? You got 2 games against Florida. The O-Dome is at least going to be tough. Whatever. We don't have to go minute by minute, game by game in this out-of-conference schedule. I'm just here to tell you, I'm not ready to say that they can't make the NCAA tournament. What I am ready to say is they need to win the next 3 starting Wednesday night against Missouri, get some momentum, because, again, that February schedule gets much tougher. There are wins to be had, though. There's no reason they should not be 5-2 going into the final week of January. All right. I'll tell you what. I've done an hour and a half of content. I thought it was a really good show. And I appreciate all of you guys and girls listening. If you're not subscribed to the Aaron Torres pod, it's what you need to do. Make sure to do so. Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Music, wherever you get podcasts, make sure that you are subscribed to the show. Also, make sure to rate and review the show. Give us a quick 5 stars. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, all that good stuff. Make sure you're following on social media. @Aaron_Torres on Twitter. @Aaron Torres pod on Instagram. Aaron Torres podcast questions @gmail.com. Aaron Torres podcast questions @gmail.com. Thank you to our partners, SeatGeek. If you use promo code Torres, that will get you $20 off your first purchase. If you use Collypuffs.com, promo code Torres gets you 15% off the entire purchase, regardless of whether it's your first purchase, your 20th purchase, whatever. And also thank you to Circa Sportsbook and Circa Casino. We will be going to Mint Kentucky Downs later in the year, whether or not Kentucky is actually a tournament contender or not. Time to go. Thank you all for listening. Darren in Australia. Darren, what time is it? I'd be curious to know. I do hope, I don't know if you're going to bed with Torres or waking up with Torres, but we appreciate your support. Interesting note from Darren. He said, I'm not a Jeff Goodman fan, but he did call it in the preseason. With that kind of NIL, Kentucky better win or BBN will turn on him. I do think there is no doubt that Kentucky's maybe even turning on him faster than I thought they would. People are not happy with Mark Pope right now. Hopefully people are happy with me. Thank you for your support. Aaron Torres Pod. We'll see about a Wednesday show. Duke Louisville is the big game tonight. There's no Mikal Brown Jr., so maybe it gets ugly, but we'll go ahead and figure things out from here. By the way, Darren says is that right? 3 a.m. in Australia? Well, appreciate you staying up, brother. Appreciate you staying up. We'll be back